3-year-old girl cries alone at bus stop. Homeless mother offers help, and millionaire discovers the truth about both of them. The bitter December wind howled through the deserted streets of downtown Boston, carrying with it the broken dreams of those forgotten by society. At the corner of Maple and Fifth, beneath a flickering streetlight, sat 3-year-old Emma, her tiny frame shivering against the cold metal of the bus stop bench. Her strawberry blonde curls, damp from the light snow, clung to tear-stained cheeks as she clutched a worn teddy bear, only companion in the growing darkness. Just hours earlier, her mother had whispered, "Wait here, baby. Mummy will be right back." Those words now echoed in the empty night, growing fainter with each passing moment, like footprints disappearing under fresh snow. Nearby, Catherine Kate Miller pulled her threadbare coat tighter, her weathered hands seeking warmth in pockets empty of everything but memories. Once a respected pediatrician, now she was just another shadow moving through the city's forgotten spaces. She had walked past this bus stop countless times, but tonight was different. Tonight, a child's muffled sobs cut through the winter silence like a knife through her heart. As Kate approached, their eyes met the child's innocent blue gaze, locking with her own tired grey ones. In that moment, two souls touched across the vast divide of circumstance, one at the beginning of life's cruel journey, the other well acquainted with its harshest lessons. Neither knew it yet, but this chance encounter would spark a chain of events that would challenge the very foundations of justice, compassion, and what it truly means to be family. The world held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Have you ever wondered where everyone watching this story is from? Drop your location in the comments below and hit subscribe to join our storytelling family. Let's connect through this touching journey together. Rebecca Turner's hands trembled as she knelt before her daughter at the bus stop bench. The streetlights cast long shadows across her face, hiding the tears she fought to contain. "Remember what Mummy taught you, Emma. Be brave, like a lion." Her voice cracked as she straightened Emma's pink wool hat, the last Christmas gift she could afford. "But Mummy, you said we'd get hot chocolate." Emma's lower lip quivered, her small fingers clutching her worn teddy bear. Mr. Snuggles, as she called him, had been her constant companion since birth, now threadbare but still beloved. "We will, sweetheart. Mummy just needs to take care of something important first." Rebecca checked her phone. 7:45 p.m. The pharmacy would close in 15 minutes. Her daughter's asthma medication had run out yesterday, and the $20 in her pocket wouldn't cover even half the cost. But she had a plan. A desperate, terrible plan. "Promise you'll stay right here? Don't move from this spot." "Okay," Rebecca fought to keep her voice steady. "Count to 100 like we practiced, and I'll be back before you finish." Emma nodded solemnly, her blue eyes wide with trust that made Rebecca's heart shatter. As she stood, a gust of winter wind whipped around them, carrying the first flakes of snow. The weather forecast had predicted a storm, but she had no choice. The medication couldn't wait. "I love you to the moon and back," Rebecca whispered, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. The familiar words of their bedtime ritual felt like acid on her tongue. "And to the stars and more," Emma replied automatically, already starting to count. 1, 2, 3. Rebecca forced herself to turn away, her steps quickening as Emma's small voice faded behind her. The plan was simple: get in, grab the medication, get out. She'd watched the pharmacy's routine for days. The elderly security guard always took his coffee break at this time, leaving the back door unattended for precisely 12 minutes. But plans, especially desperate ones, rarely unfold as intended. The minutes ticked by, and Emma's counting reached higher numbers than ever before. The snow began falling harder, collecting on her shoulders and melting into her hair. Other passengers came and went, casting curious glances at the small girl alone on the bench, but hurrying past in the growing storm. 98, 99, 100. Emma finished counting and waited. The wind picked up, rattling the metal bench. She started again. 1, 2, 3. By the third round of counting, her teeth were chattering. The bus stop's plastic shelter offered little protection against the strengthening storm. The familiar streets began to look strange in the swirling snow, transforming the neighborhood she knew into an alien landscape of white and shadows. Mummy, her voice small and frightened, was swallowed by the wind. The teddy bear's fur grew damp with snow and tears as she hugged it tighter. Across the street, the pharmacy's lights flickered off. The closed sign glowed red in the window. Still, Emma waited, remembering her mother's words, "Don't move from this spot." She was being brave, like a lion, even as fear crept in with the darkness. The digital display above the bus stop blinked 8:30 p.m. Then 9 p.m. The streets emptied as the storm intensified. Each passing car's headlights made Emma's heart leap, only to sink again when they didn't stop. The night grew colder, and her small body shivered despite her winter coat. A police siren wailed in the distance, then another. Red and blue lights reflected off the falling snow several blocks away, but Emma didn't understand their significance. She didn't know that at that very moment, her mother was being pressed against the cold metal of a police car, handcuffs clicking shut around her wrists. She couldn't hear Rebecca's desperate pleas about a little girl waiting at a bus stop, pleas that were dismissed as attempts to evade arrest. The storm raged on, and Emma's world shrank to the size of a bus stop bench, her only companions the howling wind and a teddy bear that could no longer keep her warm. In the growing darkness, she did the only thing a frightened 3-year-old could do. She began to cry, her sobs echoing through the empty street, carrying a desperate plea for someone, anyone, to notice the little girl who had been left behind. Little did she know, someone was about to answer that plea, someone who understood all too well what it meant to be abandoned by the world. Catherine Miller hadn't always been invisible. 8 years ago, she'd strode through hospital corridors in crisp white coats, her confident footsteps echoing against polished floors as children's faces lit up at her approach. Now she was just Kate, another shadow that people's eyes slid past on the streets of Boston, their gazes bouncing off her like light from a broken mirror. The corner of Maple and Fifth had become her unofficial home these past 3 years. The bus stop's metal bench wasn't comfortable, but it offered shelter from the worst of the elements, and the 24-hour diner across the street sometimes gave her leftover coffee at closing time. More importantly, it was far enough from the downtown shelters where her former colleagues volunteered. The thought of them recognizing her was more than she could bear. Tonight's storm was fiercer than usual, driving even the hardiest of street dwellers to seek better shelter. But Kate remained hunched beneath her layers of salvaged clothing, one hand absently touching the laminated hospital ID card she still carried in her coat pocket. Dr. Catherine Miller, Chief of Pediatric Medicine, Boston Memorial Hospital. The photo showed a different woman, clear-eyed, well-groomed, smiling. Before the accident, before the lawsuit, before everything. The memory surfaced unbidden, as sharp as the day it happened. Little Madison Carter, just 6 years old, coming in with what seemed like routine flu symptoms. The busy AR, the rushed diagnosis, the decision to send her home with fever medication. By morning she was gone. Bacterial meningitis had stolen her away, while Kate's misdiagnosis gave it the time it needed. The lawsuit that followed was just a formality. Kate had already sentenced herself to a lifetime of guilt. Madison's father, Michael Bennett, a prominent businessman, had tried to be kind during the proceedings. "We don't blame you," he'd said outside the courtroom, but his eyes told a different story. The medical board's investigation cleared her of gross negligence, but the damage was done. Every child's face became Madison's. Every parent's trust felt undeserved. The depression came first, then the drinking. Her marriage crumbled under the weight of her self-loathing. The house went next, then her savings. Now, at 43, she carried everything she owned in a weathered backpack, some clothes, basic toiletries, and her medical textbooks, the ones she couldn't bear to sell, even when hunger gnawed at her stomach. But Kate wasn't entirely without purpose. She'd carved out a quiet role for herself among the street community, tending to minor injuries and illnesses with whatever supplies she could scrounge. The local pharmacy would sometimes misplace basic medicines where she could find them. It wasn't legal, but neither was letting people suffer when she could help. Her hands, once steady enough for delicate procedures, now shook slightly as she pulled her coat tighter. The tremors weren't from cold alone. 3 days had passed since her last drink. She was trying to quit, again. The shakes would pass, they always did, but the memories never would. The storm intensified, whipping snowflakes into angry swirls under the streetlights. Kate watched the last commuters hurry past, clutching briefcases and shopping bags, heading home to warm houses and waiting families. She remembered being one of them, back when life made sense, back before a single mistake had revealed how fragile success could be. A distant cry caught her attention, high-pitched, young. She'd trained herself to ignore most street sounds. Survival required a certain detachment. But this sound was different. It tugged at something deep inside her, something she thought she buried along with her white coat and stethoscope. Kate stood slowly, her joints protesting the cold. The sound came again, clearer now. A child's cry, no doubt about it. Her medical instincts, dulled by years of disuse but never truly gone, began to stir. The rational part of her mind argued for caution. Getting involved only led to trouble. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. But as she turned toward the sound, another memory surfaced. Madison's father's last words to her. "Sometimes, doctor, the greatest tragedy isn't making a mistake, it's letting that mistake stop you from ever trying to help again." Kate took a step forward, then another. The wind howled around her, but she barely noticed. For the first time in years, she felt something familiar stirring in her chest, the urge to heal, to help, to make a difference. Whether it was redemption or damnation that waited at the end of this path, she couldn't say. But she knew she had to find out. Kate approached the bus stop slowly, her footsteps muffled by the freshly fallen snow. The crying grew louder, and through the swirling flakes, she made out a small figure huddled on a bench 3 stops down from her usual spot. Her heart clenched at the sight. A little girl, no more than 3 or 4, alone in the growing storm. "Hello there," Kate called softly, keeping her distance to avoid frightening the child. The little girl looked up, tears frozen on her cheeks, clutching a bedraggled teddy bear. "I'm Kate. Are you all alone out here?" Emma sniffled, studying the stranger with wary eyes. Her mother had warned her about talking to strangers, but she was so cold, so scared. Mommy said to wait. She managed between chattering teeth. She promised hot chocolate. Kate's medical training kicked in automatically as she assessed the situation. The child's lips were taking on a bluish tinge, her small frame shivering violently, early stages of hypothermia. Without intervention, this situation could turn deadly within hours. "How long have you been waiting?" Kate asked, slowly moving closer. She shrugged off her outer coat, threadbare but still warm, and held it out like a peace offering. "I counted to 100 3 times," Emma replied, her voice small. "Mr. Snuggles is cold too." She held up the teddy bear, its fur damp with snow. Kate's mind raced through the possibilities, none of them good. A mother who hadn't returned for hours, a child alone in a snowstorm. She should call the police. But her phone had been sold months ago for food money. The nearest precinct was 20 blocks away. By the time she could get help, the child might be. She couldn't let another child slip away. Not again. "Would Mr. Snuggles like to get warm?" Kate asked, wrapping her coat around Emma's shoulders. The little girl nodded, her blue eyes wide with trust that made Kate's throat tight. "I know a place nearby where we can wait for your mummy. It's warm and they might even have hot chocolate." As she spoke, Kate scanned the street. The diner across the way was still open, its windows glowing like a beacon in the storm. Old Joe, the night manager, had a soft spot for strays, both the 4-legged and 2-legged variety. Emma hesitated, remembering her mother's words about staying put. But she was so cold, and Kate's smile reminded her of the way her mother looked at her when tucking her in at night. Can Mr. Snuggles come too? Of course. He's a very important bear. Kate held out her hand, weathered and calloused but still gentle. Shall we? As Emma slipped her tiny hand into Kate's, a police siren wailed in the distance. Kate froze, her instincts screaming at her to run. This would look bad, a homeless woman with a child who wasn't hers. They'd assumed the worst. They always did. But Emma was squeezing her hand now, looking up at her with complete trust. "I'm hungry," she whispered, as if sharing a secret. In that moment, Kate made her choice. Whatever consequences came, she couldn't leave this child alone. Not like Madison. Not ever again. "Then let's get you something to eat," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. She scooped Emma up, teddy bear and all, cradling her close to share what warmth she had left. As they crossed the street toward the diner's lights, neither of them noticed the black SUV slowing at the corner, its driver watching intently through tinted windows. Michael Bennett, CEO of Bennett Pharmaceuticals, had made it a habit to drive by this area ever since he'd heard rumors of a homeless woman who matched the description of his daughter's former doctor. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. But something made him pause the gentle way the woman carried the child, the protective curl of her body against the wind. This wasn't a kidnapping, this was something else entirely. Instead of dialing 911, he pulled into a parking spot across from the diner. He would watch, wait, and make sure his instincts were right. After all, he owed Catherine Miller that much, the chance to prove that the compassionate doctor he'd once known still existed somewhere beneath those ragged clothes. Inside the diner, as the storm raged outside, Kate helped Emma onto a cracked vinyl booth. Old Joe approached with 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate, asking no questions about the odd pair, just like he never asked questions about Kate's past. The night was far from over, and Kate knew that helping this child could cost her what little she had left, but watching Emma wrap her small hands around the warm mug, she realized some prices were worth paying. The warmth of the diner had barely begun to seep into Emma's bones when Kate noticed something was wrong. The child's cheeks, previously pale from cold, now blazed with unnatural color. Her breathing had become rapid and shallow, each inhale accompanied by a slight wheeze that made Kate's medical instincts scream in alarm. "Emma, sweetheart," Kate placed her palm against the girl's forehead, feeling the heat radiating through her skin. "How long have you been feeling sick?" "My chest hurts," Emma whimpered, curling into herself. "Like when I need my special medicine." Kate's heart sank. Asthma. The cold exposure must have triggered an attack, and without knowing the child's medical history or having access to proper medication, this situation could turn dangerous quickly. Old Joe appeared at their table, concern etched on his weathered face. "Everything all right, Kate? The little one's not looking so good." "We need help, Joe. She's having an asthma attack." Kate's mind raced through her old emergency protocols. "Do you still have that first aid kit with the rescue inhaler from when Tommy worked here?" Joe shook his head. "Tommy took it with him when he left last month, but I can call an ambulance." No, Kate's response was too sharp, making Emma jump. "Softer," she added. "No ambulance. They'll ask questions we can't answer, questions that could separate Emma from her mother forever, questions that could land Kate in jail for taking a minor without authorization." The wheezing grew worse. Emma's lips were taking on a slight bluish tinge. Cyanosis, the doctor in Kate's mind supplied helpfully. Without intervention, this would become a medical emergency within minutes. Through the diner's window, Kate caught sight of the black SUV still parked across the street. It had been there since they arrived, and something about it nagged at her memory. But she had no time to dwell on it. Emma needed help now. "Joe, I need you to run to Carlton's pharmacy. Tell Mark it's for Kate." Code blue. She pulled out her most precious possession, the silver pendant her mother had given her, the last valuable thing she owned. "Give him this as collateral." Joe grabbed his coat without hesitation. Keep the necklace, Kate. Mark still owes me for fixing his roof last summer." As Joe disappeared into the storm, Kate lifted Emma onto her lap, positioning her upright to ease her breathing. "Let's play a game, sweetheart. Can you blow out birthday candles with me? Nice and slow." Emma tried to follow along, but each breath seemed more difficult than the last. Tears rolled down her feverish cheeks. "I want my mummy," she gasped. "I know, baby. I know." Kate rocked her gently, fighting back her own tears. The ghost of Madison Carter seemed to hover at the edge of her vision, another child she couldn't save. The bell above the diner's door chimed. Kate looked up, expecting Joe, but instead found herself staring into the face of Michael Bennett. Her former patient's father stood in the doorway, snow melting on his expensive coat, an albuterol inhaler in his hand. "I thought you might need this," he said quietly, crossing the room in 3 long strides. "I recognized the symptoms from before." Kate's hands shook as she took the inhaler, her mind spinning with questions, but Emma's next labored breath pushed everything else aside. With practiced movements that survived years of disuse, she administered the medication. "Small breaths, sweetheart. That's it." Just like blowing bubbles, Kate counted the seconds between puffs, monitoring Emma's oxygen levels by the gradual return of color to her lips. Michael pulled out his phone. "I should call." "Please," Kate interrupted, still cradling Emma. "Not yet." Her mother. "There's more to this story than you know." He studied her for a long moment, seeing perhaps not the broken woman from the courtroom years ago, but the doctor who had spent countless nights saving other people's children before that one fatal mistake. "You have 1 hour," he said finally, sliding into the booth across from them. "Tell me everything." As Emma's breathing eased and she drifted into an exhausted sleep in Kate's arms, the story spilled out: the abandoned child, the missing mother, the impossible choice Kate had made. With each word she waited for judgment, for condemnation, for the sound of authorities being called. Instead, Michael Bennett leaned back in the booth and said 7 words that would change everything. "I think I know where her mother is." Outside, the storm began to ease, but the night's trials were far from over. In a holding cell across town, Rebecca Turner was about to receive an unexpected visitor, and the true complexity of Emma's situation was about to unfold. Victoria Parker had been a social worker for 15 years, long enough to become both hardened and hopeful in equal measure. When the call came in about a homeless woman with a possibly kidnapped child at Joe's diner, she was already pulling on her coat. These cases rarely ended well, but something about this one felt different. The scene that greeted her through the diner's frost-covered windows wasn't what she expected. The alleged kidnapper, a woman whose face tugged at Victoria's memory, was performing what appeared to be a professional medical assessment on the child. More surprising was the presence of Michael Bennett, one of the city's most prominent businessmen, sitting calmly in the same booth. "Mess," Parker Bennett acknowledged as she entered, snow falling from her practical boots. "I was just about to call you specifically." Victoria's eyes narrowed. She'd worked with Bennett's charitable foundation before, but his presence here, at this hour, couldn't be coincidence. "Mr. Bennett, care to explain why you're interfering with a potential kidnapping investigation?" "Because it's not a kidnapping," he replied, his voice level. "This is Dr. Catherine Miller, former chief of pediatrics at Boston Memorial, and she just saved this child's life." The name hit Victoria like a physical blow. Everyone in social services knew about the Miller case, the respected doctor who'd lost everything after a tragic misdiagnosis. It had sparked a county-wide debate about medical liability and mental health support for healthcare workers. 2 police officers entered behind Victoria, hands instinctively moving to their weapons. Kate pulled Emma closer, shielding her sleeping form. "Stand down," Victoria ordered sharply. "This is now a Child Protective Services matter." She turned to Kate. "Dr. Miller, I need you to explain exactly how you came to be in possession of this child." As Kate recounted the evening's events, Victoria's trained eye caught the details others might miss: the protective way Kate held Emma, the child's complete lack of fear, The medical supplies arranged neatly on the table, signs of care, not kidnapping. The mother's name is Rebecca Turner, Michael interjected. She's currently in custody at the 12th precinct, arrested for attempting to steal asthma medication. Victoria's tablet was already out, fingers flying over the screen. Rebecca Turner, 28, single mother, no prior record. Works 2 jobs, she paused, frowning. There's a flag on her file. Something about adoption papers. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Kate said softly, running her fingers through Emma's tangled curls. This isn't just about tonight. Emma needs her medication, but Rebecca couldn't afford it. The system failed them both. The system is designed to protect children, Victoria countered, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd seen too many cases where protection meant destruction. The diner's door chimed again. Joe returned, out of breath, holding a pharmacy bag. Mark sent extra supplies, he panted. And there's reporters outside. Someone tipped them off. Victoria moved to the window. Sure enough, news vans were pulling up, their satellite dishes raising like periscopes in the storm. This was about to become a media circus. The homeless doctor, the missing child, the imprisoned mother, and the millionaire businessman all converging on one snowy night. We need to move, Michael stated, already pulling out his phone. I have a private facility. No, Victoria's voice was firm. Everything by the book. The child comes with me to emergency foster care until we sort this out. Emma stirred at the voices, her eyes fluttering open. Kate, she whimpered, don't leave me. The fear in that small voice cracked something in Victoria's professional armor. She'd seen too many children traumatized by well-meaning protocols, too many families torn apart by rigid regulations. There might be another way, she said slowly, her mind racing through regulations and loopholes. Dr. Miller, when was your last drug test? Kate blinked. 3 months ago, at the shelter clinic. Clean for 6 months now. Mr. Bennett, does your foundation still run that emergency housing program? Michael nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. We have a fully staffed facility 2 blocks from here. Then here's what we're going to do, Victoria declared, her decision crystallizing. Emma stays with Dr. Miller at the foundation facility tonight, under my direct supervision. Tomorrow we begin sorting out this mess properly: Rebecca's arrest, Emma's custody, and Dr. Miller's situation. The press will have a field day, one of the officers warned. Let them, Victoria replied. Maybe it's time people saw what desperation really looks like in our broken system. As they prepared to leave through the diner's back door, Victoria caught Kate's eye. Don't make me regret this, Doctor. Kate straightened, and for a moment Victoria saw past the worn clothes to the physician beneath. I've already lived through my biggest regret, MS. Parker. I won't let another child suffer on my watch. The small group moved out into the night, leaving Joe's diner behind. But as news cameras flashed in the distance, all of them knew this was just the beginning of a story that would challenge not just their lives, but the very systems they operated within. Rebecca Turner sat in the holding cell of the 12th precinct, her hands still trembling from the night's events. The thin blanket provided little warmth against the institutional chill, but the cold was nothing compared to the ice in her heart. Somewhere out there, her daughter was alone in the storm. Turner, a guard called. You have visitors. She looked up, expecting her court-appointed lawyer. Instead, Michael Bennett strode in, accompanied by a stern-faced social worker. Her heart stopped. These weren't the kind of visitors you wanted when your child was missing. Emma's safe, Bennett said without preamble, and Rebecca sagged against the wall in relief. She's with a former doctor who found her at the bus stop. But that's not why we're here. Victoria Parker stepped forward, tablet in hand. MS Turner, we need to discuss Emma's adoption papers, specifically the ones that don't exist. The color drained from Rebecca's face. For 3 years she'd guarded this secret, built a life around protecting it. Now, in one desperate night, everything was unraveling. Her birth mother was my sister, Caroline, Rebecca whispered, her voice breaking. She overdosed when Emma was 6 months old. There was no time for official paperwork. Child Services was already investigating her, and I couldn't let them take Emma. Victoria's fingers flew across her tablet, pulling up records. Caroline Turner, deceased 2021. Multiple substance abuse charges. You were her emergency contact. Caroline was clean during the pregnancy, Rebecca continued, the words tumbling out like a dam breaking. She tried so hard for Emma. But after the birth, the postpartum depression, the old demons, I was already caring for Emma most of the time. When I found Caroline that morning, Emma was in her crib, crying. I just took her, moved to a new apartment, told everyone she was mine. Michael and Victoria exchanged glances. This complicated everything: custody rights, criminal charges, Emma's future. The medication I tried to steal tonight, Rebecca's voice strengthened with determination. Emma's asthma is genetic. Caroline had it too. I couldn't afford the prescription, and our insurance application was denied because... She trailed off, the impossible situation crushing her once again. Because you have no legal right to make medical decisions for her, Victoria finished, despite being the only mother she's known for 3 years. Michael paced the small space, his mind working. The theft charges are one thing, but if this comes out about Emma... They'll take her away, Rebecca's voice cracked. Put her in the system. Please, she's all I have. Everything I've done, working 2 jobs, moving to a safer neighborhood, even tonight, it's all been for her. Victoria studied her tablet again, but her eyes were softer now. There might be a way. The doctor who found Emma tonight, Dr. Catherine Miller, she's qualified to make medical assessments. If she testifies that removing Emma from your care would cause significant psychological harm. Catherine Miller, Rebecca interrupted. The pediatrician who lost her license after that tragedy. The one who lives on the streets now. Michael's jaw tightened at the mention of his daughter's doctor, but he nodded. The same. And she just saved your daughter's life tonight, using her medical expertise, despite everything she's lost. Rebecca leaned forward, hope flickering in her eyes. So there's a chance. A complicated one, Victoria cautioned. We'll need to file emergency kinship care paperwork, backdate adoption proceedings, prove you've been Emma's primary caregiver. Mr. Bennett's influence might help expedite things, but we need to know everything, Michael finished. No more secrets, Ms. Turner. Emma's future depends on complete honesty now. Rebecca took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Caroline left a letter explaining why she chose to end things. She wrote that she knew Emma would have a better life with me. I keep it in a safety deposit box, along with Emma's original birth certificate and Caroline's death certificate. Victoria's fingers paused over her tablet. That letter could be crucial. It shows intent to transfer custody, even if not legally executed. I'll have my legal team here within the hour, Michael said, already pulling out his phone. We'll post bail, begin the paperwork. Why, Rebecca asked suddenly. Why are you helping us? You don't know me. Michael was quiet for a moment, looking at the desperate mother before him. Because 3 years ago, I helped destroy a good doctor's life over a mistake made with the best intentions. Maybe helping you and Emma is a way to begin making that right. As they laid out the plan, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope, but mixed with that hope was a new fear. Once Emma learned the truth about her mother, would she ever forgive Rebecca for the lies? Outside the precinct, the storm was finally breaking. Dawn would soon arrive, bringing with it reporters hungry for the story of the homeless doctor and the abandoned child. But now there was a deeper story emerging, one about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of motherhood. The question was, would the truth set them free or tear them apart? A homeless doctor risking everything to save a child, a desperate mother stealing medicine to keep her daughter alive. These touching moments deserve a like, but surprisingly, no one has clicked that button yet. Would you help change that? Michael Bennett stood at the window of his foundation's emergency housing facility, watching the first light of dawn paint the sky in watercolor hues. Behind him, Kate Miller slept in an armchair, Emma curled trustingly in her lap. The scene stirred memories he'd spent years trying to suppress. "Your coffee, sir," his assistant whispered, placing a steaming cup beside him. "The press is gathering outside. They're calling it the bus stop miracle already." Michael nodded absently, his mind traveling back to another winter night 8 years ago. His daughter Madison had been running a fever. The emergency room was overcrowded, and Dr. Miller had been on hour 16 of her shift. He remembered her kindness, how she'd made Madison laugh despite the fever, the careful way she'd explained everything to them. If only they'd known about the bacterial meningitis sooner. If only. Sir, his assistant interrupted his thoughts. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting. They're concerned about the Foundation's involvement in this situation." "Tell them I'll be there," Michael replied, his voice firm. "And Sarah? Pull everything we have on Rebecca Turner's sister Caroline. Medical records, death certificate, everything." As his assistant left, Michael studied Kate's sleeping face. The years on the street had aged her, but he could still see traces of the confident doctor who'd treated his daughter. The lawsuit that followed Madison's death had been his wife's idea, a way to channel their grief into action. He'd gone along with it, too numb with loss to protest. By the time he'd realized the devastating impact on Dr. Miller's life, it was too late. He'd watched from afar as she lost everything, her license temporarily suspended, but her confidence shattered permanently. Her descent into homelessness had made local headlines, but when he'd tried to reach out, she'd vanished. Emma stirred in her sleep, and Kate's arms instinctively tightened around her. The gesture was so reminiscent of how she'd held Madison that Michael had to look away. His phone buzzed a message from Victoria Parker, Rebecca's bail posted. "Legal team in place. But there's more to Caroline Turner's story. Need to meet ASAP." Michael's investigative instincts, honed by years in pharmaceutical development, tingled. He'd already noticed something odd in the timing. Caroline Turner's death coincided with the recall of an experimental asthma medication his company had been developing. A medication that had showed promising results but unexpected side effects in certain patients. But a soft knock at the door preceded Victoria's entrance. The social worker looked like she hadn't slept, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "I found something," she whispered, joining him at the window. "Caroline Turner was part of the clinical trials for Asthmaguard in 2021. Michael's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. Asthmaguard, his company's failed wonder drug. The trial that had cost them millions and nearly bankrupted their research division. The side effects, he breathed. Depression was the leading reported complication. Victoria finished. And the timing of her overdose. 2 weeks after we terminated the trial, Michael closed his eyes, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Does Rebecca know? I don't think so. But that's not all. Victoria handed him her tablet. Look at who signed off on Caroline's participation in the trial. There, at the bottom of the medical clearance form, was a familiar signature: Dr. Catherine Miller, Chief of Pediatrics. The date was just 3 weeks before Madison's death. Michael's mind raced. Had the stress of the failing trial affected Kate's judgment that fatal night? Had his daughter's death been collateral damage in a much larger tragedy? We can't tell them, he decided, watching Kate and Emma sleep. Not yet. Kate's just starting to find her way back, learning she had an indirect role in Caroline's death, in Emma's situation. Might destroy her completely, Victoria agreed. But secrets have a way of surfacing, Mr. Bennett, and when this one does, then we'll deal with it, Michael said firmly. For now we focus on keeping Emma with Rebecca, getting Kate back on her feet, and managing the media circus this is about to become. As if on cue, camera flashes lit up the pre-dawn street below. The story was breaking, and with it, the careful life Michael had built since Madison's death was about to change dramatically. But watching Kate hold Emma, seeing the chance for redemption in both their broken lives, he knew he'd made the right choice. Sometimes, he realized, miracles weren't about divine intervention, they were about people choosing to be better than their past mistakes. The sun rose fully over Boston, promising a new day and new beginnings. But in the shadows of that promise lurked secrets that threatened to unravel everything they were trying to build. Word spread through Boston's homeless community like wildfire. One of their own had saved a child, and now the powers that be were circling. By mid-morning, a quiet but determined crowd had gathered near the Bennett Foundation facility, not to protest or cause trouble, but to stand guard. "Doc Kate patched up my Jimmy's arm last winter," said Martha, an elderly woman who'd been living in her car for 2 years. "Didn't have no medicine, but she knew just how to clean it, how to wrap it. Saved us a $1,000 hospital bill we couldn't pay." Others nodded, sharing their own stories. Kate Miller might have lost her license, but to Boston's forgotten population, she'd never stopped being a doctor. She was the one who checked on them during cold snaps, who knew which pharmacist might misplace basic supplies where they could be found, who remembered their allergies and medical histories when the system had long since forgotten them. Old Joe from the diner moved through the crowd, distributing coffee and day-old pastries. "She saved my Maria," he told anyone who'd listen. Found the lump before anyone else noticed. Kept pushing till the free clinic took her serious. "My daughter's alive because of Doc Kate." The media, initially gathered for a sensational story about child abandonment, found themselves instead documenting an unexpected groundswell of support. The camera crews captured homeless individuals, speaking articulately about healthcare inequality, about the impossible choices poverty forced upon good people, about the broken systems that had failed them all. "You want to know who Kate Miller is?" A young man named Trevor stepped forward, his worn Harvard sweatshirt marking him as one of the city's many displaced students. "She's the one who organizes us when the shelters are full. Makes sure the elderly get the warm spots, keeps track of who needs what medicine. She lost everything, but she never lost her humanity." Inside the facility, Victoria Parker watched the gathering crowd with growing concern. "This could complicate things," she murmured to Michael Bennett. "Public support is good, but this level of attention might be exactly what we need." Michael finished. "Look at them, not just homeless individuals, but nurses from free clinics, social workers, community organizers. They're not here to cause trouble. They're here to testify." A commotion at the edge of the crowd drew their attention. Rebecca Turner, freshly released on bail, was trying to make her way through. The homeless community, initially wary, recognized her story in their own struggles. They parted silently, creating a path to the facility's door. "Your daughter's mama?" Martha asked, touching Rebecca's arm. "We've been praying for you both. Doc Kate, she understood why you did what you did. Said sometimes love makes criminals of us all." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't let her suffer. The medicine was right there, behind that counter, but the system." "We know, honey," Martha soothed. "We all know." Inside, Emma had finally woken up, still clinging to Kate. The child's fever had broken, but she remained unusually quiet, as if sensing the weight of the moment. When Rebecca entered the room, Emma's face lit up. "Mummy," she cried, running to Rebecca's arms. "Kate made me all better. She's magic, like Mary Poppins." The adults in the room exchanged glances over Emma's head. The child's innocent comparison of Kate to a magical nanny who appeared when children needed her most felt strangely appropriate. Through the window, they could hear the crowd growing, more voices joining the impromptu testimony about Kate's underground medical work. Local politicians were arriving now, drawn by the media presence and the unexpected narrative emerging. "They're not just defending you," Michael observed to Kate, who stood watching the scene with disbelief. "They're defending what you represent, someone who saw a broken system and found a way to help anyway." Kate shook her head, overwhelmed. I was just trying to survive. To make up for Madison. No, Michael cut her off gently. You were doing what you always did, being a doctor. Maybe not with a license or an office, but with something more important: compassion. Victoria's tablet chimed with updates. The story's going national. Bus stop miracle is trending. People are sharing their own stories of medical debt, of choosing between medicine and food. Outside, the crowd had begun to sing an old gospel hymn about healing and hope. The sound filtered through the windows, wrapping around the small group inside like a protective embrace. What happens now? Rebecca asked, still holding Emma close. Now, Victoria said, her professional demeanor softening, we let them tell your story. All of your stories. Sometimes the court of public opinion can move mountains that the legal system can't. As if in response, the crowd's voice grew stronger, their impromptu hymn rising above the city noise like a prayer. Inside the room, Emma began to hum along, her small voice joining the chorus of those who understood that sometimes the greatest miracles come not from heaven, but from the human heart's capacity to care for strangers. The conference room at the Bennett Foundation hummed with tension as Victoria Parker laid out the stark reality of their situation. Spread across the polished table were documents that told a story of systemic failure: medical records, insurance denials, social service reports, and the haunting emergency room records from the night Madison Bennett died. Let me be clear, Victoria began, her professional facade cracking slightly. What we have here is a perfect storm of bureaucratic incompetence. Rebecca Turner, a woman with no legal right to the child she's raised for 3 years, forced to steal medication because she couldn't get insurance. Dr. Miller stripped of her license not because of incompetence, but because our medical system offers no support for physicians traumatized by loss, and Emma caught in the middle of it all. Michael Bennett stood at the window, watching the crowd of supporters below continue to grow. The irony, he said softly, is that my company's foundation has a program specifically designed to provide free asthma medication to underprivileged children. If Rebecca had only known. But she couldn't apply. Kate interrupted, her voice bitter with understanding, because she had no legal custody, one broken system feeding into another. Victoria nodded, pulling up more documents on her tablet. It gets worse. Caroline Turner's participation in the Asthma Guard trial should have entitled her estate, meaning Emma, to significant compensation after the trial's failure, money that could have paid for years of medication. But because Rebecca couldn't legally claim it, the funds are still sitting in an escrow account. Michael finished. Over $100,000, gathering dust while a child couldn't breathe. The room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled. Outside, news helicopters circled the building, their distant thrum a reminder of the media storm brewing. There's more, Victoria continued, her fingers trembling slightly as she pulled out another file. I did some digging into the night Madison died. The hospital was severely understaffed because 3 senior physicians had quit the week before, citing burnout. Dr. Miller was covering multiple departments. The lab technician who mixed up the blood test results had been working a double shift. Kate flinched at the memories, but Michael held up his hand. We're not here to relitigate the past. We're here to prevent history from repeating itself with Emma. That's just it, Victoria pressed. The system hasn't changed. Last month alone, 4 children were admitted to Boston Memorial with preventable complications because their families couldn't afford routine medications. 2 died. The same hospital that lost Madison is still losing children. Not because we lack the medicine or the knowledge, but because we've built a system that prioritizes profit over people. Rebecca, who had been quietly listening while holding a sleeping Emma, spoke up. When Caroline was alive, she tried to get help. Rehab programs had year-long waiting lists. Mental health services required insurance she couldn't get because of her addiction. It was like watching someone drown while surrounded by life preservers just out of reach. The metaphor hung heavy in the air. Kate moved to the window, watching the crowd below. Many faces were familiar patients she'd treated in alleys and under bridges, people failed by the same system that had failed her. "We can't fix everything," Michael said finally, "but maybe we can start with this one case. Make it so visible, so public, that it forces a conversation about change." Victoria's tablet chimed with new alerts. Social media is already picking up on the deeper issues. Healthcare failures and broken system are trending alongside bus stop miracle. People are sharing their own stories of being caught in bureaucratic limbo. "But that puts Emma at risk," Rebecca protested. "If people dig too deep, find out about Caroline." "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Kate said suddenly, turning from the window. "The truth. All of it. About Caroline and the drug trials. About Madison and that night at the hospital. About how a system designed to help people keeps failing them instead." Michael studied Kate carefully. "You'd be willing to revisit that night? To talk about Madison?" "For Emma?" "Yes," Kate's voice strengthened. "Because Madison's death should have changed things, should have led to reforms, to support systems for medical staff, to better protocols. Instead, it just destroyed careers and families while the broken system rolled on. Maybe this time, with Emma's story intertwined, people will finally listen." Victoria began typing rapidly on her tablet. "I'll draft a strategy. We'll need to coordinate with legal, prepare statements, gather supporting documentation." No, Kate interrupted. "No strategies, no prepared statements, just the truth, raw and uncomfortable as it is. Let people see what happens when systems fail the very people they're meant to protect." Outside, the crowd had begun chanting, "Healthcare is a right, not a privilege." The sound carried through the windows, a reminder that their personal drama was part of a much larger story. Emma stirred in her sleep, and all eyes turned to her, the innocent catalyst for what was about to become a very public fight for change. The question wasn't just whether they could save one child's family, but whether they could help fix a system that had failed so many others. The juvenile court building loomed grey and imposing in the morning light as Kate and Rebecca climbed the steps. Emma held protectively between them. The crowd from the Bennett Foundation had followed, their quiet presence forming a human corridor through the gathering media circus. Victoria Parker met them at the entrance, her professional demeanor masking her concern. "Judge Thompson is presiding," she whispered as they passed through security. "She's tough but fair. More importantly, she has a history of prioritizing children's emotional well-being over strict legal protocols." Inside the courtroom, the battle lines were already drawn. On one side sat Sarah Matthews, the state's most zealous child protection advocate, her reputation for separating families in the name of protocol preceding her. On the other, Michael Bennett's legal team, armed with stacks of documents and precedent cases. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Eleanor Thompson entered, her silver hair and stern expression commanding immediate respect. The initial proceedings moved quickly: Rebecca's arrest, Emma's rescue, Kate's intervention. But when Sarah Matthews rose to speak, the real fight began. "Your Honor." Matthews began, her voice sharp with righteous conviction, "We have a clear case of child endangerment. M.S. Turner, who has no legal right to the child in question, abandoned her at a bus stop in a snowstorm. Dr. Miller, whose medical license was suspended following a fatal incident, took the child without authority. These actions demand immediate protective custody." Judge Thompson's eyes narrowed. "And where would you suggest placing the child, M.S. Matthews?" "We have an excellent facility." "You mean the same facility that's currently operating at 143% capacity?" the judge interrupted. "The one that lost 3 children to the streets last month because they didn't have enough staff." Matthews faltered momentarily but pressed on. "Your Honor, the law is clear regarding non-custodial care." The law, Judge Thompson cut in again, is meant to protect children, not traumatize them. Dr. Miller approached the bench. Kate rose on shaky legs, feeling every eye in the courtroom follow her movement. Despite her cleaned-up appearance courtesy of the Bennett Foundation, she felt exposed, vulnerable. Dr. Miller, in your medical opinion, what would be the psychological impact of separating Emma from MS Turner at this point? Kate straightened, her doctor's training taking over. Catastrophic, Your Honor. Emma has formed a secure attachment to Rebecca as her primary caregiver. At 3 years old, sudden separation could lead to severe trauma, potentially causing lasting emotional and developmental issues. Objection. Matthews stood. Dr. Miller's license was temporarily suspended and is eligible for reinstatement. Michael Bennett's lawyer smoothly interjected. Her medical knowledge remains intact and relevant. Judge Thompson held up her hand for silence. MS Turner, your turn. Rebecca approached, her hands trembling but her voice steady. I loved my sister, Your Honor. When she died, I didn't think about legal procedures or proper channels. I only thought about Emma, about protecting her from a system that had already failed her mother. Every decision I've made since then, including the desperate choice to steal medication, was driven by one goal: keeping her safe and healthy. The judge studied Rebecca for a long moment before turning to Emma, who sat quietly beside Victoria. Emma, would you come here, please? The child walked forward, clutching Mr. Snuggles. The courtroom held its collective breath. Emma, do you know why you're here today? Judge Thompson's voice softened considerably. Emma nodded solemnly. Because Mummy needed my breathing medicine, but couldn't get it, and Kate helped make me better when I was sick. And who is Mummy to you? Emma pointed at Rebecca without hesitation. She takes care of me and reads me stories and makes the scary things go away. And Kate is like Mary Poppins. She has magic doctor hands that made my chest stop hurting. A ripple of gentle laughter swept through the courtroom, quickly silenced by the judge's raised eyebrow. MS Matthews, Judge Thompson said, leaning forward, would you have me ignore the obvious emotional bonds here, the community support? The clear evidence that, despite their unorthodox situation, this child is loved and well cared for. Your Honor, precedent? Precedent is not destiny, Counselor. The law must serve justice, not blind adherence to procedure. Judge Thompson straightened in her chair. I am issuing an emergency temporary custody order granting joint guardianship to MS Turner and Dr. Miller, pending full adoption proceedings. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Matthews jumped to her feet. Your Honor, that's completely unprecedented. So is this entire situation, the judge countered. Dr. Miller's medical expertise combined with MS Turner's established care provides Emma with optimal support. Mr. Bennett's foundation will provide housing and medical coverage. She fixed Matthews with a stern look. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the media why we're separating a child from loving caregivers in favor of an overcrowded system. As the judge's ruling was recorded, Kate and Rebecca exchanged stunned looks. Emma, sensing the tension break, ran to hug them both. Outside the courtroom, Victoria allowed herself a small smile. This is just the beginning, she cautioned. There will be appeals, hearings, mountains of paperwork. But watching Emma swing happily between Kate and Rebecca's hands as they descended the courthouse steps, none of them could bring themselves to worry about the battles ahead. For now, love had won over bureaucracy, humanity over protocol. The gathered crowd erupted in cheers as they emerged, their signs now reading "Family comes first and love makes a family" above them. The morning sun broke through Boston's clouds, as if nature itself was celebrating this small victory against a broken system. Yet in her office across town, Sarah Matthews was already preparing her appeal, her determination fueled by years of seeing good intentions lead to tragic outcomes. The battle for Emma's future was far from over. The women's holding facility at Suffolk County Correctional was a study in grey walls, grey uniforms, grey faces. Rebecca Turner sat at a metal table in the visitation room, her fingers tracing the edges of another letter she'd written to Emma, this one explaining why Mummy couldn't tuck her in tonight. Mail calls in an hour, Officer Jenny Martinez said kindly, sliding a cup of decent coffee across the table. Jenny had taken an interest in Rebecca's case after seeing the news coverage. Want me to make sure this one gets priority handling. Rebecca managed a grateful smile. It was her 14th letter in 7 days. Each one carefully worded, trying to balance truth with protection, love with explanation. How do you tell a 3-year-old that Mummy might go to prison for trying to help her breathe? MS. Turner, a new voice interrupted her thoughts. Michael Bennett's lawyer, David Chen, entered with his signature leather briefcase. We need to talk about Caroline's letters. Rebecca's hand instinctively went to her throat, where she kept the key to the safety deposit box on a thin chain. I thought the judge's ruling is being appealed. David finished, sitting down. Sarah Matthews is building a case around Caroline's mental state during the trial period. She's arguing that if Caroline was mentally unstable due to the medication's side effects, her informal transfer of custody to you might be invalidated. The words hit Rebecca like physical blows. She'd never connected Caroline's decline to the experimental medication. Her sister had battled demons for years. The timing had seemed like tragic coincidence. There's more. David continued gently. Matthews has subpoenaed Caroline's complete medical records from the trial, including the psychological evaluations Dr. Miller signed off on. Rebecca's coffee grew cold as David explained the complications. Kate's involvement in the trial, though peripheral, could be used to challenge her fitness as Emma's joint guardian. The very history that had brought them together now threatened to tear them apart. But the letters, Rebecca insisted. Caroline was clear about wanting me to raise Emma. She wrote about her fears, about knowing she couldn't stay clean, about trusting me to give Emma the life she deserved. Those letters might be our strongest defense, David agreed. But we need to prove Caroline was lucid when she wrote them. And he hesitated. We need to address the money. Rebecca's heart sank. The compensation fund from the failed trial money that could have prevented everything if she'd only been able to claim it legally. Now it sat in escrow, a testament to the cruel ironies of their situation. Officer Martinez returned with a fresh coffee and a newspaper. The headline made Rebecca wince. Bus stop miracle or medicinal martyrdom. Below was a split image: Emma sleeping in Kate's arms at the diner and Caroline's death certificate. They're calling you a symbol, Jenny commented, tapping the article. The desperate mother, the homeless doctor, the lost sister. It's becoming bigger than just your case. Rebecca pushed the paper away. She hadn't wanted to become a symbol. She'd just wanted her daughter to breathe. David pulled out more documents. We need to get ahead of the narrative. Matthews will try to paint Caroline as a victim of medical experimentation, you as an opportunist who took advantage of her sister's condition, and Dr. Miller as a disgraced physician who enabled it all. None of that is true, Rebecca's voice echoed off the grey walls. Truth isn't always enough, David said softly. But sometimes the full truth is more powerful than any partial narrative. Tell me about Caroline, Rebecca. Not the addict, not the trial participant, but your sister. The woman who loved Emma enough to know she couldn't keep her. The memories flooded in Caroline, teaching her to braid hair, defending her from schoolyard bullies, crying with her over their first heartbreaks. The joy in her eyes when Emma was born, mixed with terror of responsibility. The way she'd watch Rebecca with Emma, smiling sadly as if seeing a future she couldn't be part of. The last time I saw her, Rebecca whispered, she was clear-eyed, calmer than she'd been in months. She said she'd found peace knowing Emma would have me, that some people aren't meant to be mothers but are meant to choose the right mothers for their children. David's pen moved rapidly across his legal pad. Did she write that down? In any of the letters? Rebecca nodded. The last one. She wrote it the night before she left us. Said she was setting us both free, Emma from a future of uncertainty, and me from a lifetime of watching from the sidelines. That letter could change everything, David said. It shows premeditation, clear thinking, deliberate choice. Combined with the trial's documented side effects, it creates reasonable doubt about any suggestion of opportunism. Jenny, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "You're not just fighting for custody anymore, are you? You're fighting to protect Caroline's last wish." Rebecca looked down at her newest letter to Emma, the words blurring through her tears. "I'm fighting for all of us, Emma, Caroline, Kate, for every parent who's had to make impossible choices, for every child caught in the gaps of a system that cares more about rules than reality." David began packing up his briefcase. "The appeal hearing is in 3 days. Matthews will come hard at the legitimacy of Caroline's decisions, at your right to make medical choices for Emma, at Dr. Miller's involvement. Are you ready for that?" Rebecca squared her shoulders, thinking of Emma safe with Kate, of Caroline's sacrifice, of all the mothers out there facing their own impossible choices. "I've been ready since the night Caroline placed Emma in my arms and made me promise to give her a better life. Some promises are worth going to prison for." As David left, Rebecca pulled out a fresh piece of paper. This letter to Emma would be different. It was time to tell her niece, her daughter, about the aunt who loved her enough to let her go, and the twisted path that had led them all to this moment of truth. Outside, protesters on both sides of the case gathered, their signs reflecting the complex moral questions at play. But inside the grey walls, Rebecca wrote their story with clarity and purpose, each word a testament to the fierce, complicated love that had brought them here. Seated in Michael Bennett's private office, Kate Miller stared at the file in front of her, its contents spilling out like ghosts from her past. Clinical trial documents, psychological evaluations, her own signature at the bottom of Caroline Turner's medical clearance form, all dated just weeks before Madison's death. "I should have seen it," she whispered, fingers tracing her old signature. "The trial participants were showing signs of depression. I documented it, flagged it for review, but the company wanted to push forward." Michael finished, his voice heavy. "We were so close to a breakthrough. A new asthma medication that could help millions. The pressure from shareholders could have cost Emma both her mother's." Kate's voice cracked. First Caroline through the trial's side effects, then Rebecca through the legal system's failure. The weight of interconnected tragedies pressed down on them both. Through the office windows they could see protesters gathering again outside the Bennett Foundation building. Some carried pictures of Madison, others of Caroline. Signs demanded accountability, reform, justice. Sarah Matthews' legal team had done their homework. Tomorrow's appeal would link every thread: Kate's role in the Asthma-Guard trials, her subsequent misdiagnosis of Madison, Caroline's decline and death, Rebecca's desperate actions, and Emma's precarious future. "They'll say I'm unfit," Kate said quietly. "That my judgment was compromised then, and is compromised now. They'll be right." Michael turned from the window sharply. "No, you were doing your job under impossible circumstances, just like the night Madison. The night I killed your daughter." The words hung in the air between them, finally spoken after 8 years. "The night the system killed my daughter," Michael corrected firmly. "The understaffing, the double shifts, the pressure to move patients through quickly, those weren't your choices. They were corporate decisions, policy decisions, the same kind of decisions that kept Rebecca from getting Emma's medication legally." Kate stood, pacing the luxurious office. "But I signed off on them. I cleared Caroline for the trial despite her history of addiction. I sent Madison home despite her symptoms. I keep trying to help, and people keep getting hurt." "Do you know what Madison said about you?" Michael's question stopped her mid-stride. "In the hour while we were waiting, she said, 'Daddy, Dr. Kate has magic hands. She makes everything better.'" He smiled sadly. "Emma called you magic too, at the diner. Children see truth that adults miss." Before Kate could respond, Victoria Parker burst into the office, tablet in hand. "We have a problem. Matthews isn't just going after Kate's medical decisions. She submitted a motion to examine every case Kate has handled since living on the streets. Every homeless person she's treated, every makeshift clinic she's run. But those people are alive because of her. Michael protested. Practicing without a license is still illegal, Victoria reminded them, no matter the outcome. Kate sank back into her chair, the full implications hitting her. All those people who came to support us, Matthews will use them against me, turn them into evidence of my disregard for medical protocols. Unless Michael started pacing, his business mind engaging. Unless we reframe the narrative, not as a doctor ignoring protocols, but as a broken system forcing good people to make impossible choices. Victoria's fingers flew across her tablet. Connected all the trial's rushed approval process, the hospital's staffing issues, the insurance gaps that forced Rebecca to steal, the legal barriers that kept Emma's compensation fund out of reach, show how the same systemic failures that contributed to Madison's death are still destroying lives. And put me on the stand, Kate said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. Let me testify about all of it. Madison, Caroline, the homeless patients, everything. No more hiding, no more shame. Kate, Michael warned, that could mean criminal charges. Your license. My license stopped mattering the moment I chose to help people without it, Kate interrupted. What matters is showing the court, showing everyone that sometimes the most ethical choice is to break the rules of a broken system. Victoria studied her tablet thoughtfully. Public opinion is already shifting. People are sharing stories of medical debt, of choosing between medication and food, if we time your testimony right. No timing, Kate insisted. No strategy. Just truth. About how I live with Madison's death every day. About how I saw the same desperation in Rebecca that I saw in Caroline during the trials. About how every homeless person I've treated is another Emma, another victim of a system that values protocols over people. Michael moved to the window again, watching the crowd below grow. Among the protesters, he spotted familiar faces, nurses from the free clinics, former patients, homeless individuals Kate had treated. They weren't just defending her, they were testifying to her impact. Tomorrow, he said finally, when Matthews brings up Madison, I want to testify too. About what really happened that night, about the corporate decisions that set it all in motion. It's time I took responsibility for my part in this broken system. Kate's eyes filled with tears. Michael, you don't have to. Yes, I do. For Madison. For Emma. For every patient who suffered because we prioritized profits over people he turned back to face them, his decision made. If we're going to expose the truth, let's expose all of it. Victoria's tablet chimed with new alerts. Matthew's team just submitted their witness list. They're calling former trial participants, hospital administrators, ethics board members. Good, Kate said, surprising them both. Let them come. Let them all come. Because for every witness they bring to show how I broke the rules, we'll show why those rules needed breaking. Outside, the sun was setting over Boston, casting long shadows through the office windows. Tomorrow would bring either vindication or devastation, but for now, in this moment of committed truth-telling, Kate felt lighter than she had in years. The ghosts of her past, Madison, Caroline, and countless others would finally have their say, and perhaps in the telling of their stories, both justice and healing could begin. The Suffolk County Courthouse hummed with tension on the morning of the appeal hearing. Every seat in the gallery was filled medical professionals, social workers, homeless advocates, and members of the press packed shoulder to shoulder. Outside, the crowd had grown so large that police had closed off the street, creating an impromptu forum where those who couldn't fit inside gathered around portable speakers broadcasting the proceedings. Judge Eleanor Thompson surveyed the scene before her, noting the clear battle lines drawn in her courtroom. Sarah Matthews sat with her team of prosecutors and child welfare experts, their tables laden with documents and precedent cases. Opposite them, Michael Bennett's legal team flanked Kate Miller and Rebecca Turner, while Emma sat with Victoria Parker in the front row, clutching Mr. Snuggles. Before we begin, Judge Thompson announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs, Let me be clear, this hearing will address not only the custody of Emma Turner but also the broader systemic issues that led us here. Ms. Matthews, you may proceed. Matthews rose, her crimson suit a slash of colour in the formal setting. Your Honour, we intend to prove that Dr. Catherine Miller's involvement in the Asthmagard trials, coupled with her subsequent medical mistakes and illegal practice while homeless, demonstrates a pattern of dangerous decision-making that makes her unfit for guardianship. She turned to face the gallery, her voice rising with practiced intensity. We will show how Dr. Miller's approval of Caroline Turner for drug trials, despite known addiction issues, contributed to a chain of events resulting in death. We will demonstrate how her continued unauthorized practice of medicine shows a fundamental disregard for legal and medical protocols. The strategy was clear: paint Kate as a danger to Emma by linking every tragedy in her past. But as Matthews called her first witness, a former hospital administrator, something unexpected happened. Dr. Miller was working a 36-hour shift when Madison Bennett died, the administrator testified. We were understaffed due to budget cuts. She had requested backup multiple times. Matthews frowned. Please restrict your answers to the questions asked. But the pattern continued. Each witness called to condemn Kate ended up revealing deeper systemic failures. A nurse testified about impossible patient loads. A pharmacist described insurance regulations that prevented life-saving medications from reaching those in need. When Matthews called Michael Bennett himself, expecting him to recount Madison's tragic death, the courtroom held its breath. Mr. Bennett, Matthews began, please describe the night your daughter died under Dr. Miller's care. Michael stood tall, his gaze sweeping the courtroom. I'll describe the night my daughter died under a broken system's care. The night corporate policies valued profit over patient safety. The night I watched a dedicated doctor try to save my child while drowning in an impossible workload. Objection, Matthews called. Non-responsive. Overruled, Judge Thompson replied. Continue, Mr. Bennett. I blamed Dr. Miller because it was easier than facing the truth that Madison's death was the result of systemic failures we all allowed to happen. The same failures that forced Rebecca Turner to steal medication for Emma. The same failures that left Dr. Miller treating the homeless because it was the only way to help those the system abandoned. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Matthews quickly called Kate to the stand, hoping to rattle her with direct confrontation. Dr. Miller, did you or did you not approve Caroline Turner for a drug trial knowing her history of addiction? Kate's voice was steady. I approved her because the alternative was leaving her with no treatment at all. The same impossible choice Rebecca faced with Emma. The same choice I face every time I help someone on the streets. So you admit to practicing medicine without a license? I admit to refusing to watch people suffer when I could help them. Just like I refused to walk past a scared little girl at a bus stop. Kate's eyes found Emma in the crowd. Sometimes the most ethical choice is to break unjust rules. Matthews pressed harder. And Madison Bennett was ignoring protocols ethical then. The courtroom went silent. Kate's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm. Not a day goes by that I don't think of Madison. Her death broke something in me, but it also showed me something crucial, that following protocols while ignoring humanity isn't medicine, it's bureaucracy with a stethoscope. She turned to face the judge directly. I've made mistakes, Your Honor, but loving Emma, protecting her, wanting to give her both the medical care and maternal love she needs, that's not one of them. Rebecca was the final witness, clutching Caroline's last letter. As she read it aloud, her voice carried the weight of every parent who had ever faced impossible choices for their child's survival. I choose to leave Emma with Rebecca, she read, because sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is recognize when someone else can give their child a better life. I trust my sister to love Emma as I wish I could, to protect her as I cannot. Looking up from the letter, Rebecca's eyes were clear. Caroline made her choice. I made mine. And Dr. Miller made hers. All of us choosing love over rules, care over protocol, humanity over system. Judge Thompson sat silently for a long moment after the testimony concluded. The courtroom waited, hundreds of hearts beating in suspended animation. The law, she began finally, is meant to protect, but when the law becomes a barrier to protection, when it forces good people to make impossible choices, then perhaps it is the law that needs to change. She straightened in her chair. I am upholding the joint custody arrangement for Emma Turner. Furthermore, I am ordering a full review of the systemic issues revealed in this hearing, from medical staffing policies to insurance regulations to trial protocols. The gallery erupted in cheers. Matthews began to protest, but the judge wasn't finished. Ms. Matthews, your zealous adherence to protocol is admirable, but your failure to see the humanity behind these cases is not. The best interest of the child includes not only physical safety but also emotional well-being and community support. Emma has found both with her unique family. As the judge's gavel fell, Emma broke free from Victoria's hold and ran to Kate and Rebecca, wrapping her arms around both of them. The image of former doctor, a struggling mother, and the child who brought them together would appear on front pages across the country the next day. Outside, the crowd's cheers echoed through downtown Boston. But in the quiet of the courtroom, 3 women and a little girl held onto each other, their unlikely family forged in the fire of a broken system's failures and tempered by the strength of their love. The battle was won, but the war for systemic change was just beginning. As they left the courthouse together, they knew their story would become a rallying cry for others caught in the same broken systems. Sometimes it takes a miracle at a bus stop to start a revolution. The bus stop miracle healthcare revolution, or rule of law crisis, blazed across the Boston Globe's front page the morning after the hearing. The image below showed Kate, Rebecca, and Emma descending the courthouse steps, surrounded by a sea of supporters. Within hours, the story had gone viral, igniting a firestorm of debate across social media and news networks. CNN's Anderson Cooper dedicated an entire hour to the case, featuring a heated panel discussion between medical ethics experts, legal scholars, and healthcare advocates. What we're seeing here, argued Dr. Sarah Chen, a prominent medical ethicist, is the collision between human compassion and institutional protocol. When does breaking the rules become not just acceptable but morally necessary? Fox News took a different angle, with Tucker Carlson warning viewers about the dangers of judicial activism. Today it's one judge making exceptions for a sympathetic case. Tomorrow it's the complete breakdown of medical licensing standards. Where do we draw the line? The medical community found itself deeply divided. The American Medical Association released a carefully worded statement acknowledging the complexity of the case while reaffirming the importance of licensing regulations. Meanwhile, a group of emergency room doctors started a viral hashtag #IamKitMiller, sharing stories of impossible choices made under systemic constraints. Local coffee shops and dinner tables buzzed with debate. If it was your child struggling to breathe, one mother argued at a PTA meeting, wouldn't you break any rule to save them? The Bennett Foundation's phones rang constantly with media requests. Michael Bennett appeared on 60 Minutes, speaking candidly about corporate responsibility in healthcare. We've created a system, he explained, where profit margins matter more than patient outcomes. Madison's death, Caroline's addiction, Emma's struggle for medication, these aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a terminally ill healthcare system. Social media exploded with personal stories. Broken system and healthcare failures trended nationally as people shared their own experiences of choosing between medication and food, of watching loved ones suffer due to insurance denials, of falling through bureaucratic cracks. Religious leaders joined the conversation. Reverend James Walker of the Boston Community Church wrote an op-ed comparing Kate to biblical figures who chose moral law over human legislation. Rabbi Sarah Goldman countered with a thoughtful piece about the balance between individual conscience and societal order. The homeless community became unexpected media darlings. News crews interviewed people Kate had treated, revealing a shadow healthcare system born of necessity. "She saved my life," declared Martha Williams, an elderly woman living in her car. "When the emergency room turned me away because I couldn't pay, Dr. Kate treated my infection. Without her, I'd be dead." Politicians seized the moment. Progressive lawmakers introduced the Emma's Law bill, aimed at reforming healthcare access and insurance regulations. Conservative opponents warned of slippery slopes and the dangers of emotional policymaking. Academic institutions organized symposiums discussing the broader implications. Harvard Law School hosted a panel titled Compassion BS. Compliance Re-examining Medical Ethics in the Modern Age. Medical schools across the country incorporated the case into their ethics curricula. The pharmaceutical industry watched nervously as attention turned to drug trials and pricing. Former Asthma-Guard trial participants came forward with their stories, forcing a broader conversation about medical research ethics and patient protection. Celebrity activists jumped on the bandwagon. Ellen DeGeneres invited Kate, Rebecca and Emma onto her show, bringing national attention to the human side of the story. Sometimes Kate told the tearful audience, "The real miracle isn't what we do, but what we're willing to risk to help others." Legal scholars debated Judge Thompson's ruling in law reviews and academic journals. By prioritizing human welfare over strict legal interpretation, wrote Professor James Chen of Yale Law, the court has established a precedent for examining systemic failures in healthcare access cases. The debate reached international shores. European media pointed to the case as an example of American healthcare dysfunction, while developing nations saw it as a reflection of universal struggles with medical access and regulation. Local impact was immediate and tangible. The Boston Medical Board announced a review of licensing reinstatement procedures. 3 major hospitals revised their staffing policies. Insurance companies faced increased scrutiny over coverage denials. But through it all, Emma remained surprisingly adaptable. During a particularly contentious town hall meeting, she approached the microphone and simply said, "My mummies help me breathe when nobody else would." The video went viral, cutting through the political noise to the heart of the matter. Kate and Rebecca found themselves reluctant symbols of a movement larger than themselves. Interview requests piled up, advocacy groups sought their endorsement, and book deals were offered. They declined most, choosing instead to focus on building their unconventional family and supporting grassroots healthcare reform efforts. The public debate showed no signs of cooling as similar cases emerged nationwide. In Chicago, a nurse faced licensing challenges for running a free clinic in her garage. In Houston, a mother was arrested for sharing her child's excess prescription medications with other families in need. What the bus stop miracle has shown us, wrote Time magazine in their cover story, is that our healthcare system doesn't just need reform, it needs revolution. When good people are forced to break laws to save lives, perhaps it's the laws that need examining, not the people. As the media circus continued, Kate, Rebecca, and Emma retreated to the quiet sanctuary of their new home, provided by the Bennett Foundation. They couldn't escape the knowledge that their personal story had become a national parable, but they could ensure that Emma remained grounded amid the storm. Sometimes Kate told a journalist who asked about their newfound fame, "The most important revolutions start with the smallest acts of love." She glanced at Emma, peaceful in Rebecca's arms. "We didn't set out to change the system. We just couldn't walk away from a child in need." The debate raged on, but in living rooms and hospital halls across America, something had shifted. People began looking at their own communities differently, questioning the rules that had seemed immutable, and asking themselves, what would I have done at that bus stop on that snowy night? While the public debate raged in the media, a more intimate battle was unfolding within the walls of the Bennett Foundation's temporary housing facility. Emma's asthma, triggered by the stress and constant movement of the past weeks, had worsened significantly. Kate found herself facing her first real test as both doctor and guardian. Her oxygen levels are dropping, Kate explained to Rebecca, her medical training warring with maternal panic. We need to get her on a nebulizer treatment immediately. The equipment, donated by Michael's foundation, hummed in the background as Emma wheezed in her sleep. Rebecca paced the room, guilt etching lines in her face. I should have noticed earlier, the way she was breathing at dinner. Stop, Kate interrupted firmly. We both know asthma can escalate quickly. What matters is that we're handling it now. Her hands remained steady as she adjusted Emma's mask, but her mind raced with memories of other children, other crises. Madison's face flickered at the edges of her consciousness. The night stretched long before them. Emma's breathing would ease, then labor again, each episode testing Kate's resolve. This wasn't a back-alley consultation or an emergency patch job. This was her child now, legally and emotionally, and failure wasn't an option. Meanwhile, across town, another battle was being fought in the offices of the State Medical Board. Michael Bennett stood before the licensing committee, advocating for Kate's reinstatement. Dr. Miller has demonstrated not just competence, but extraordinary dedication to patient care under the most challenging circumstances, he argued. Her work with the homeless community, while technically unauthorized, has saved countless lives. The committee members exchanged glances. Mr. Bennett, the chair, began carefully. Your support is noted, but Dr. Miller's history is precisely why she should be reinstated, Michael interrupted. She's lived the consequences of systemic failure from both sides. Who better to help reform the system? Back at the facility, Emma's crisis peaked near dawn. Her oxygen levels plummeted, and for one terrifying moment, Kate froze the weight of every past failure pressing down on her. But then Emma's small hand found hers, squeezing with trust, and the paralysis broke. Rebecca, call an ambulance, Kate ordered, switching to emergency protocols. Her lips are turning blue as she worked, her movements precise and confident. She realized something profound. She wasn't just fighting for Emma's breath, she was fighting for her own redemption. The emergency room staff at Boston Memorial recognized Kate immediately. Some had worked with her during her tenure as chief of pediatrics. The whispers followed her down the hallway. That's Dr. Miller. Bus stop miracle. Practicing without a license. But when Emma's condition stabilized, it was these same colleagues who approached her one by one with their own stories of impossible choices and system failures. We need you back, Dr. Sarah Chen, her former resident whispered. The system needs doctors who understand both sides of the stethoscope. Rebecca watched this unfold from Emma's bedside, seeing for the first time the full scope of Kate's former life and what she'd lost. You miss it, she observed quietly as they waited for Emma's discharge papers. Every day, Kate admitted. But not like this. Not just the medicine, but the ability to help openly, legally, to fight for change from within. The next morning brought news from the medical board. Kate's reinstatement would be considered, with conditions, supervised practice, regular evaluations, and a probationary period. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. They're scared, Michael explained, delivering the news personally. Not of you failing, but of you succeeding. A doctor who's seen both sides of the system, who can't be bought or silenced. You're dangerous to the status quo. Emma's recovery marked a turning point for their unconventional family. Kate found herself balancing medical decisions with maternal instincts, while Rebecca learned to trust her own judgment alongside professional advice. They developed a rhythm, each contributing their strengths to Emma's care. The Foundation's facility became their temporary home, but more importantly, it became their sanctuary. Here, away from the media spotlight and public debate, they could focus on what mattered: healing not just Emma's breathing, but their own wounded spirits. Kate began documenting everything: Emma's treatments, the gaps in care they encountered, the workarounds they discovered. If we're going to change the system, she explained to Rebecca late one night, we need to show exactly where it breaks down. Rebecca contributed her own insights, drawn from years of navigating healthcare as an unofficial guardian. Together, they built a compelling case study in real time, demonstrating both the failures of the current system and possible solutions. Emma, resilient as only children can be, adapted to their evolving family dynamic. She called Kate Dr. Mummy and Rebecca Mama, finding nothing strange in having two mothers with different roles in her care. Her episodes became less frequent as they established a stable routine and consistent treatment plan. One evening, as they sat together reviewing Emma's progress, Kate received an unexpected call from the medical board. They wanted her to testify before a legislative committee on healthcare reform. The personal had become political, their private battles merging with the public fight for change. "Are you ready for this?" Rebecca asked, watching Kate struggle with the decision to step back into that world. Kate looked at Emma, peacefully drawing pictures at the coffee table, her breathing clear and strong. Then at Rebecca, who had risked everything to save her child. Finally, at her own reflection in the window, no longer the broken doctor from the bus stop, but something new, a healer forged in the fire of failure and redeemed by love. "Yes," she answered simply. "Because this time I'm not fighting just for protocols or procedures. I'm fighting for family, ours and every other family caught in the gaps of a broken system." Their personal battles were far from over, but they had found strength in their union, purpose in their struggle, and hope in their shared love for a little girl who had brought them together on a snowy night at a bus stop. Sometimes the biggest miracles grow from the smallest moments of courage. Every story of compassion deserves to be shared. Like Kate and Emma's journey, your support can create ripples of change. By subscribing to this channel, you're not just following a story, you're joining a community that believes in the power of human kindness. Let's make a difference together. The first family dinner in their new permanent home at the Bennett Foundation's residential complex felt surreal. Kate stood at the stove, stirring pasta sauce while Rebecca set the table with Emma's enthusiastic help. Through the window, the Boston skyline glittered against the darkening sky, so different from the view at the bus stop, where their story began. "Careful with those plates, sweetheart," Rebecca cautioned as Emma proudly carried each dish to the table. "Remember what we practiced. Two hands, walk slow, look where I'm going," Emma recited, her face scrunched in concentration. The ceramic plates had been a housewarming gift from the homeless community, each one hand painted with scenes from their story: the bus stop, the diner, the courthouse steps. The doorbell rang, announcing their dinner guests. Michael Bennett arrived first, carrying wine and a stuffed bear for Emma. "Mr. Snuggles needs a friend," he explained. Victoria Parker followed, her usual professional demeanor softened by casual clothes and a homemade pie. Old Joe from the diner came next, his weathered face beaming as he presented a loaf of fresh-baked bread. "The night shift sends their love," he told Kate, referring to the diner's regular homeless customers. "They miss their doctor, but they're proud of what you're doing now." The small apartment filled with warmth and conversation as more guests arrived. Martha from the homeless community, now employed as the foundation's outreach coordinator, Dr. Chen from the hospital, who had become Emma's official pediatrician, even Officer Jenny Martinez, who had watched over Rebecca during her brief detention. "To think," Jenny mused, "helping Kate serve the pasta. A few weeks ago we were all strangers. Now look at us." The dining room table, salvaged from a second-hand store and lovingly restored by Rebecca, groaned under the weight of shared dishes. Everyone had brought something: casseroles, salads, desserts, a potluck celebration of their unlikely family. Emma flitted between guests like a happy butterfly, showing off her new room with its hand-painted clouds on the ceiling, Martha's artistic contribution, and the small medical kit Michael had given her, "So I can be magic like Dr. Mummy." "She's thriving," Victoria observed quietly to Kate. "The latest assessments show remarkable improvement, both physically and emotionally. You've created something special here." Kate watched as Rebecca helped Emma demonstrate proper stethoscope technique to an amused Michael. "We all did," she corrected. Every person in this room played a part in saving her. The conversation flowed easily, crossing the boundaries of social class and profession that had once seemed insurmountable. Martha shared stories of her new job helping others find housing. Dr. Chen discussed plans for a community health initiative inspired by their case. Michael outlined the Foundation's expanded programs for medical assistance and family support. Sometimes old Joe said, raising his glass, it takes a miracle to remind us that we're all connected, that helping one child can lead to helping many. As they gathered around the table, Emma insisted on saying grace, a tradition she'd learned from Martha. "Thank you for my 2 mummies," she began, her small voice clear and strong, "and for all my new family, and for helping me breathe better, and for Mr. Snuggles, and..." The adults exchanged misty-eyed glances as her gratitude list continued, each item a reminder of how their lives had intertwined through chance and choice. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Kate found herself on the small balcony with Michael. Below, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. "Madison would have loved this," he said softly, "seeing her doctor become a mother, helping other children. She always said you had magic hands." Kate felt tears prick her eyes. "I think about her every day, about all the children we couldn't save. But now you're changing the system that failed them," Michael finished, "one family at a time." Inside, they could hear Emma's laughter mixing with the sounds of Rebecca and Victoria cleaning up, Martha teaching old Joe a new card trick, and Dr. Chen discussing community clinic plans with Officer Martinez. They had built more than a home here. They had created a bridge between worlds, connecting people who might never have met if not for a desperate choice on a snowy night. As the last guests departed, Emma fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by her new stuffed animals. Kate and Rebecca sat beside her, their fingers intertwined, watching their daughter breathe easily in her sleep. "We did it," Rebecca whispered. "We really did it." Kate squeezed her hand. "We're just getting started." The children's therapy room at the Bennett Foundation's medical center was painted in soft blues and greens, with clouds drifting across the ceiling. Dr. Sarah Wilson, a child psychologist specializing in trauma, watched as Emma carefully arranged her dolls in a circle on the play carpet. "And this one is sick," Emma explained, laying a doll down. "But Dr. Mummy and Mama know how to make her better." She reached for her toy medical kit, a constant companion these days. Dr. Wilson noted how Emma processed her experiences through play, the abandoned doll at the bus stop, the caring doctor, the worried mother. Each session revealed layers of understanding beyond her years. "You have 2 mummies now," Dr. Wilson observed gently. "How does that feel?" Emma didn't look up from her dolls. "Dr. Mummy knows how to help me breathe, and Mama knows how to make the scary things go away. And they both know how to love really big." In separate sessions, Kate and Rebecca worked through their own healing. Rebecca struggled with lingering guilt over Emma's bus stop abandonment, while Kate confronted her fears of failing another child. "I keep dreaming about Madison," Kate confessed during one therapy session, "but now she's sitting with Emma, showing her how to use an inhaler, like she's giving us her blessing." Their family counseling sessions became a safe space for building new traditions and boundaries. They learned to navigate the complexities of co-parenting, blending medical expertise with maternal instinct. "It's okay to disagree," their family therapist reminded them. "What matters is showing Emma that love can take many forms and that healing happens together." The physical healing progressed alongside the emotional. Emma's asthma improved under consistent care, her episodes becoming rarer as they established routines and preventive measures. Kate's hands grew steady again as she relearned the rhythm of official medical practice, while Rebecca's shoulders gradually lost their defensive hunch. Their home became a place of healing rituals. Morning breathing exercises turned into playful games, with Emma teaching her stuffed animals proper inhaler technique. Evening medications were paired with story time, creating positive associations. Even the nebulizer treatments became special cloud-making sessions where they shared their day's adventures. The Foundation support groups provided another layer of healing. Rebecca found solace among other parents who had faced impossible choices for their children's health. Kate connected with healthcare professionals struggling with burnout and moral injury. Healing isn't just about getting better, Kate explained during one group session. It's about understanding that our scars make us better healers for others. Emma's nightmares about the bus stop gradually transformed. Now, when I dream, she told Dr. Wilson, the snow turns into fairy dust, and everyone gets warm and better. The community continued to play a vital role in their recovery. Martha organized a weekly art therapy session where Emma painted her feelings in bold colors. Old Joe's Diner became a safe space for difficult conversations over warm comfort food. Officer Martinez stopped by regularly, helping Emma see that authority figures could be trusted friends. Progress came in small victories: Emma's first full night's sleep without fear, Rebecca's ability to let Emma out of her sight at daycare, Kate's steady hands performing her first official medical examination since reinstatement. "You're creating a new model of healing," Dr. Wilson observed during a family session. One that combines professional care with personal understanding, medical knowledge with emotional wisdom. The therapy room's walls gradually filled with Emma's artwork, pictures of her growing family, of helping others, of the magic she saw in everyday moments of care. Each drawing marked another step in their collective healing journey. One breakthrough came during a joint session when Emma spontaneously hugged both her mothers, declaring, "We're like a big band-aid, we stick together and help make things better." The simplicity of her metaphor brought tears to their eyes. In many ways, they were all healing each other, Emma's trust helping Kate rebuild her confidence, Kate's medical care easing Rebecca's fears, Rebecca's devotion showing them all the strength of unconditional love. As spring arrived, bringing new growth to Boston, their little family bloomed in unexpected ways. Emma's breathing grew stronger, Kate's nightmares about Madison became less frequent, and Rebecca's guilt began to fade like old bruises healing. Dr. Wilson watched their progress with quiet satisfaction. In her notes, she wrote, "The miracle isn't just that they found each other, but that they're showing others how healing happens not in isolation, but in community, not despite our wounds, but because of how we help each other heal." Their story became a testament to the power of holistic healing, where medical care and emotional support worked hand in hand, where professional boundaries and personal love found new ways to coexist, and where a little girl's breath became the rhythm to which they all learned to dance toward health. The final adoption hearing fell on a bright spring morning, exactly 6 months after that fateful night at the bus stop. The Suffolk County Family Court's chambers were filled with familiar faces, everyone who had been part of their journey gathering to witness the legal culmination of their unlikely family. Judge Eleanor Thompson, who had presided over their initial custody battle, smiled as Emma bounced into the courtroom wearing a dress that matched both her mother's outfits. "I see someone's ready for her special day," she observed, her usual judicial severity softened by the child's enthusiasm. Victoria Parker presented the final paperwork, a thick stack of documents representing months of careful legal navigation. "Your Honor, we're here to finalize the joint adoption of Emma Turner by Dr. Catherine Miller and Rebecca Turner, establishing legal recognition of their existing family bond." The proceedings moved smoothly through the required steps. Rebecca's official adoption of Emma was confirmed first, backdated to include the years she'd already served as primary caregiver. Then came Kate's petition, transforming their temporary guardianship into permanent parenthood. The home study reports are exemplary, Judge Thompson noted, reviewing the files. "The child's medical care has improved significantly, her emotional development is flourishing, and the support system you built is remarkable." Sarah Matthews, who had once fought so hard against their custody, stood to make her final statement. "Your Honor, the State Child Services has completed its review. We find the arrangement not only acceptable but potentially groundbreaking. The combination of medical expertise and established emotional bonds has created an optimal care environment. Michael Bennett provided financial statements showing the family's stability. The Foundation's housing program had been expanded into a permanent residence for healthcare workers transitioning from crisis, with Kate and Rebecca's apartments serving as the pilot unit. Furthermore, Michael added, Dr. Miller's medical license has been fully reinstated, with her new role focusing on community health initiatives. The Foundation has established a legal fund to help other families caught in similar healthcare gaps. The judge turned to Emma, who sat between her mothers, clutching Mr. Snuggles. "Emma, do you understand what's happening today?" Emma nodded solemnly. "You're making us officially forever family." Like in my drawing, she held up a picture showing 3 figures surrounded by hearts and what appeared to be legal books influenced by her recent fascination with courtroom procedures. The courtroom chuckled, but there were tears in many eyes. The journey from that snowy bus stop to this moment had changed not just their lives, but had sparked systemic changes throughout Boston's healthcare and family services. "By the power vested in me," Judge Thompson declared, "I hereby confirm the joint adoption of Emma Turner by Rebecca Turner and Catherine Miller. Furthermore," she paused, looking over her glasses, "I am entering into record this case's significance in establishing precedent for medical custody considerations and healthcare access rights." As she struck her gavel, the courtroom erupted in applause. Emma hugged both her mothers tight, while their extended family Martha, Old Joe, Officer Martinez, Dr. Chen, and others celebrated around them. Victoria approached with the final adoption certificates, each bearing Emma's new full name, Emma Caroline Turner Miller. The middle name, honoring her birth mother, had been Rebecca's suggestion, acknowledging all the strands of love that had woven together to create their family. "There's one more thing," Michael announced as the celebration continued. "The Asthma Guard Compensation Fund has been legally transferred to a trust for Emma's future medical needs, with additional funding allocated for similar cases throughout the state." The legal resolution represented more than just paperwork. It was official recognition that families could take unexpected forms, that love could bridge professional and personal boundaries, and that sometimes the best solutions came from breaking traditional molds. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered once again, medical professionals, social workers, community members, all celebrating not just one family's victory, but the changes their story had inspired. New legislation was already in process, dubbed the Emma Effect, addressing healthcare access and family rights. As they posed for photos on the courthouse steps, Emma between her mothers, holding both their hands, Kate caught Rebecca's eye. They had come so far from that desperate night, from split-second decisions and impossible choices. Now they stood as legal parents, their unconventional family officially recognized and celebrated. "Ready to go home?" Rebecca asked as the crowd began to disperse. Emma looked up at both her mothers, her face bright with joy. "We're always home when we're together," she declared, wisdom beyond her years shining in her eyes. Kate squeezed their hands, feeling the weight of the adoption certificates in her pocket. The legal battle was over, but their real work building a family, healing others, changing systems was just beginning. And now they could face it together, officially and forever. The miracle that began at a bus stop had transformed into something larger than themselves, a testament to the power of love to transcend boundaries, heal wounds, and create new definitions of family. Summer brought new rhythms to the Turner-Miller household. Their apartment, once a temporary shelter, had transformed into a true home, filled with the organized chaos that only a family with a precocious 4-year-old could create. Medical textbooks shared shelf space with children's stories, and Emma's artwork adorned walls alongside framed medical licenses and family photographs. But morning routines had evolved into a well-choreographed dance. Kate would check Emma's peak flow readings while Rebecca prepared breakfast, turning the daily medical monitoring into a game. "Look, Dr. Mummy, the numbers are dancing up high today." Emma would exclaim, making the necessary medical procedures feel less clinical and more like family traditions. The division of parental roles came naturally, though not always along expected lines. Kate, despite her medical background, often found herself being the more emotionally intuitive parent, perhaps because of her years connecting with patients in crisis. Rebecca, with her practical experience raising Emma alone, excelled at the logistical aspects of parenting, while providing the consistent stability Emma needed. It's like we each fill in the gaps the other didn't even know they had. Rebecca observed one evening, watching Kate teach Emma about lung anatomy using cookie dough shapes. The lesson had started as medical education, but had devolved into giggles and flower fights. Their home became a unique blend of clinic and sanctuary. The spare room functioned as both a medical consultation space and a playroom, with anatomical charts sharing wall space with crayon masterpieces. Emma took pride in helping during Kate's home consultations with special patients, solemnly handing out stickers to adults who took their medicine properly. The challenges of their unconventional family surfaced in unexpected ways. Emma's preschool registration had required additional paperwork and explanations, but which one is the real mom? Well-meaning teachers would ask, only to have Emma proudly explain they both are. One fixes bodies, and one fixes hearts, and they both fix everything together. Nighttime remained the most precious time for their family. The bedtime routine included not just stories but breathing exercises disguised as dragon games and medication schedules transformed into magic potion time. Both mothers would sit on Emma's bed, one on each side, creating a cocoon of safety and love. "Tell me again about the bus stop," Emma would often request, never tiring of hearing how their family came to be. Each telling emphasized different aspects: the courage, the care, the community that helped them stay together. The story became their family mythology, a testament to how love could bridge any gap. Their apartment's balcony became a favorite spot for family meetings, where they would discuss everything from Emma's medical progress to upcoming school events. The city lights below reminded them of how far they'd come from that snowy night at the bus stop. "Do you ever wonder," Kate asked one evening, as they watched Emma arrange her medical toys for her stuffed animals' checkups, "if we're doing this right, breaking all the traditional family rules?" Rebecca smiled, remembering similar doubts from her early days as Emma's unofficial mother. "I think we're writing our own rules, and looking at her, they seem to be working pretty well." The proof was in the small moments: Emma's confident smile during her preschool's Family Day presentation, her careful explanation to new friends about having two mummies with different kinds of magic, her improved health under their combined care. Their family dynamic wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, creating a model that others began to study and emulate. Social workers would sometimes visit, not to check on them, but to learn how they balance professional medical care with personal family bonds. As summer faded into autumn, their family photographs showed more than just three people growing closer. They captured the evolution of a new kind of family, one built on the foundation of professional dedication and personal love, proving that sometimes the most beautiful families grow from the most unexpected circumstances. Emma summed it up best during one of her preschool projects about family: "I have two mummies who fixed each other while fixing me, and that's the best kind of family magic there is." Kate's return to official medical practice came with unexpected twists. The Bennett Foundation had established a unique hybrid clinic where she could combine traditional pediatric care with community outreach. Her office, designed with input from Emma, featured both state-of-the-art medical equipment and child-friendly touches that made even the most nervous patients feel at ease. Dr. Kate's Magic Room, as it became known among patients, operated on principles learned from her years on the streets. The waiting area included a food pantry and clothing exchange. No one was turned away for lack of insurance, and appointment times were flexible to accommodate working parents' schedules. Rebecca found her own professional path, transitioning from part-time retail work to becoming the clinic's patient advocate. Her experience navigating the healthcare system as an unofficial guardian made her uniquely qualified to help other families caught in similar situations. Sometimes she'd tell struggling parents, "The bravest thing you can do is ask for help." The clinic became a model for integrated family care. Kate's medical expertise combined with Rebecca's practical experience created an environment where healing went beyond physical symptoms. They understood firsthand how medical crises affected entire families, and their approach reflected this holistic understanding. Emma became the clinic's unofficial mascot, helping younger patients feel comfortable with medical procedures by demonstrating on her stuffed animals. See, she'd explain, showing proper inhaler technique to a nervous child. Mr. Snuggles does it too, and he's very brave. Kate's medical lectures at Boston University now included sections on street medicine and crisis care. Medical students would shadow her, learning not just clinical skills but also how to maintain humanity in healthcare. Sometimes she'd tell them the most important prescription is compassion. Rebecca developed a training program for other patient advocates, sharing her insights into navigating insurance bureaucracy and social services. Her curriculum included practical advice gained from personal experience, which forms to file first, which offices had sympathetic staff, how to appeal denials effectively. Their professional lives intertwined in unexpected ways. During difficult cases, they would often consult each other, combining medical knowledge with practical caregiving experience. Other clinics began adopting their collaborative model, recognizing the value of integrating medical and social support. The Bennett Foundation expanded its healthcare initiatives based on their success. New clinics opened in underserved neighborhoods, each staffed with both medical professionals and patient advocates. Michael Bennett often cited their story when speaking about healthcare reform at medical conferences, but Emma's preschool became a testing ground for new health education programs. Kate developed child-friendly lessons about asthma management, while Rebecca created support groups for parents of children with chronic conditions. Their personal experience as mothers informed every aspect of their professional innovations. Their work attracted attention from healthcare reformers nationwide. Visiting doctors would observe their clinic's operations, taking notes on how they balanced professional care with personal understanding. Medical journals published studies on their integrated care model, dubbing it the bus stop protocol, a reference to their unlikely beginning. Kate's medical license reinstatement hearing became a platform for discussing healthcare access. Instead of simply defending her past actions, she presented evidence of how community-based care could bridge gaps in traditional medical systems. The board not only reinstated her license but also created new guidelines for community health initiatives. Rebecca's role evolved to include training social workers in medical advocacy. Her program emphasized practical solutions over bureaucratic procedures, teaching others how to navigate the system while maintaining focus on family welfare. Their professional transitions reflected their personal journey, moving from crisis response to systemic change, from individual solutions to community impact. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to demonstrate how healthcare could be both professional and personal. As autumn approached, they prepared to expand their programs further. The clinic would add mental health services and legal aid, creating a true one-stop resource for families in crisis. Their professional growth mirrored their personal evolution, proving that sometimes the best healing happens when boundaries between helper and help blur into something new and more effective. The ripple effects of the bus stop miracle spread through Boston like waves in a pond. What began as one desperate encounter on a snowy night transformed into a movement that reshaped how the city approached healthcare and family services. The Bennett Foundation's integrated clinic became a hub for community transformation. Local businesses, inspired by Old Joe's Diner, started pay-it-forward programs for medical expenses. Pharmacies implemented sliding-scale payment systems, and a network of volunteer drivers emerged to help patients reach medical appointments. Emma's story inspired a citywide initiative called Breath of Hope, providing emergency asthma medication to children regardless of insurance status. The program, funded through a partnership between the Bennett Foundation and local businesses, saved dozens of families from facing the same impossible choices Rebecca had encountered. Martha's art therapy sessions expanded into a full-scale community healing program. The walls of the clinic's waiting room showcased artwork from children processing their medical experiences, their colorful interpretations of healing bringing warmth to the sterile medical space. The homeless community, once invisible to many, became active participants in healthcare outreach. Those Kate had treated during her years on the streets now worked as peer counselors, using their experiences to help others navigate the system. Their insights proved invaluable in identifying and addressing gaps in service. Officer Martinez established a new police protocol for medical emergencies involving families in crisis. Instead of immediate arrests, officers were trained to consider medical necessity and connect families with resources. The program, dubbed Compassion First, significantly reduced medical-related arrests while increasing access to care. Local medical schools revised their curricula to include modules on community health and crisis care, with Kate and Rebecca regularly guest lecturing. Students learned not just medical procedures but also the importance of understanding patients' social contexts and family dynamics. Emma's preschool became a model for health-inclusive education. Teachers were trained in basic medical awareness, and children learned age-appropriate lessons about health and helping others. The program spread to other schools, creating a generation of young people more aware of healthcare accessibility issues. The annual bus stop miracle walk became a citywide tradition, raising funds for medical assistance while celebrating the power of community care. Participants wore breathing masks decorated by local artists, symbolizing both medical necessity and creative resilience. Dr. Chen's community clinic initiative expanded to neighboring cities, each location adapting the integrated care model to their specific community needs. The success rates in patient compliance and recovery spoke to the effectiveness of combining professional care with community support. Social media amplified their impact through the Breathe Together campaign, connecting families facing similar challenges and showcasing solutions found within communities. The movement sparked similar initiatives nationwide, with other cities looking to Boston as a model for healthcare reform. Local government responded to the groundswell of community activism by establishing a healthcare access task force, with Rebecca and Kate serving as key advisors. Their recommendations led to policy changes that made medical care more accessible to vulnerable populations. The homeless shelter system underwent revision based on insights from Kate's street medicine experience. Medical screening became standard protocol, and shelter staff received basic healthcare training. The changes resulted in earlier intervention for health issues and better long-term outcomes. Martha's outreach program evolved into a formal community health ambassador initiative, training former patients to help others navigate the healthcare system. Their personal experiences added a crucial human element to medical bureaucracy. As winter approached again, the city prepared for their second annual medical resource fair, where families could connect with healthcare providers, social services, and community support networks all in one location. The event, centered around the principle that everyone deserves care, embodied the lasting impact of their story. The bus stop miracle had grown beyond its original participants, becoming a catalyst for communal change. It proved that sometimes the most significant transformations begin with simple acts of compassion, and that true healing happens not in isolation, but in community. The morning of Emma's first day of kindergarten dawned bright and clear, a far cry from the stormy night that had brought their family together. Emma stood in front of their apartment mirror, proudly wearing her new backpack decorated with medical symbols, a perfect blend of both her mother's influences. "Ready for your big day?" Dr. Emma Kate asked, adjusting her daughter's hair bow while checking her peak flow readings out of habit. The numbers were strong, a testament to months of consistent care and love. Rebecca captured photos as Emma posed with her custom lunchbox, which featured a painting of their family done by Martha. Inside, alongside healthy snacks, was a note with their family motto, "Breathe deep, love deeper." The significance of this milestone wasn't lost on anyone. A year ago, Emma had been a frightened child at a bus stop. Now she was striding confidently into Riverside Elementary, where her story had already inspired a new school health program. The school nurse, trained under Kate's community health initiative, welcomed Emma with understanding of her medical needs. The classroom had been equipped with an air purifier, a donation from the Bennett Foundation that would benefit all students. "Remember," Rebecca whispered, kneeling to hug Emma goodbye, "you have magic just like your mummy's." "I know," Emma replied with the wisdom of a child who had lived through miracles. "Dr. Mummy's magic makes bodies better, Mama's magic makes hearts stronger, and my magic is sharing their love." As they watched their daughter join her classmates, Kate and Rebecca held hands, their own journey coming full circle. The bus stop visible from the school playground no longer represented fear and separation. It had become a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Emma turned to wave one last time, her smile bright enough to light up the whole playground. In that moment, she wasn't just starting school, she was carrying forward the miracle that had created her family, one breath at a time. A year after that fateful night at the bus stop, the impact of their story continued to ripple outward in unexpected ways. The Bennett Foundation's integrated healthcare model had been adopted by clinics in 12 states, each adapting the bus stop protocol to their local needs. The medical community's response exceeded all expectations. Hospitals nationwide began reviewing their emergency protocols, incorporating lessons learned from Kate's experience. The medical schools added modules on crisis care and family advocacy, using their case study as a cornerstone of modern healthcare ethics. Legislative changes followed the public awakening. Emma's law passed in Massachusetts, requiring emergency medical assistance for children regardless of insurance status. Similar bills were being considered in other states, each citing the bus stop miracle as inspiration. Rebecca's patient advocacy program became a national model, with training centers opening across the country. Her curriculum, combining practical experience with compassionate care, transformed how medical institutions approached family support. The homeless community saw perhaps the most profound changes. Street medicine programs flourished, legitimized by Kate's example. Former patients became healthcare navigators, their lived experience valued as expertise. Social media amplified their influence through countless shared stories of families facing similar challenges. The hashtag #BusStopMiracle evolved from their specific story to a broader movement for healthcare access and family rights. International attention brought delegations from countries seeking to understand how a crisis at a bus stop had catalyzed such sweeping reforms. They studied not just the medical protocols, but the human elements that made the program successful. Michael Bennett's foundation expanded its scope, establishing a research center dedicated to studying the intersection of medical care and social justice. The first paper published was titled "The Emma Effect: How One Child's Story Changed Modern Healthcare." As autumn painted Boston's trees in gold and red, their story continued to inspire new initiatives and changes. Each success, each life touched, added another layer to the miracle that began on a snowy night when a homeless doctor chose to help a frightened child. The ripple effect proved that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could create the largest waves of change. Their family story had become more than a miracle, it had become a movement. On the anniversary of that snowy night, the Turner Miller family hosted a special dinner at Old Joe's Diner, now renovated but still maintaining its warm, welcoming atmosphere. The familiar booth where Kate had first treated Emma's asthma attack had been preserved, a small plaque marking its significance. The gathering brought together everyone who had played a part in their miracle. Michael Bennett, whose foundation had made so much possible; Martha, now running successful art therapy programs; Officer Martinez, whose compassion had helped change police protocols; Victoria Parker, still fighting for family rights; and countless others whose lives had intertwined with theirs. Emma, now a confident kindergartner, moved among the guests like a tiny hostess, proudly showing off her new medical vocabulary and improved breathing techniques. Her original teddy bear, Mr. Snuggles, sat in a place of honor wearing a tiny stethoscope. "Remember when you thought you weren't worthy of being a mother?" Rebecca whispered to Kate as they watched their daughter charm the crowd. "Now look at us, we're redefining what family can be." Old Joe brought out a special cake decorated with a bus stop scene in frosting. As Emma blew out the candles, her breath strong and sure, everyone reflected on how far they'd come from that desperate night. The evening ended with an impromptu speech from Emma herself, standing on a chair with both her mother's steadying hands supporting her. "Thank you for helping my mummies find each other," she declared with childish sincerity, "and for showing everybody that love is the best medicine." As snow began falling softly outside the diner's windows, Kate and Rebecca exchanged glances. The scene mirrored that fateful night, but everything had changed. The bus stop across the street no longer represented desperation and fear. It had become a symbol of hope, of family, of miracles born from the simplest acts of compassion. Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the snowflakes dance. "Look," she exclaimed, "the sky is celebrating with us." In that moment, surrounded by their chosen family, they knew that their story wasn't ending, it was evolving, growing, inspiring others to believe in the power of love to heal not just bodies, but hearts and communities too. The bus stop miracle had come full circle, and its magic continued to spread, one breath, one family, one act of kindness at a time. As our story of the bus stop miracle comes to a close, we hope it touched your heart as much as it touched ours. If you believe in the power of compassion and want to support more stories like this, please hit that subscribe button and join our storytelling family. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that miracles still happen, and leave a like to help others find this story. What touched you most about Kate, Rebecca, and Emma's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and should we explore what happens next in their story? Let us know if you'd like to see part 2 of the bus stop miracle.